Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Today we're going to be talking about fear. After all, fear seems to be one of the number one reasons people don't set out and achieve what they tend to achieve. The question is where does this fear come from and when did it start? Well, on the program today we're going to be talking about how there's the possibility that it was created before birth, perhaps at birth or in a prior lifetime, and how we can discover the cause which may lead to a cure. On the program today, our guest is a trauma resolution specialist who uses past life and present life regression therapy, and we're going to find out how and what this all is. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program our guest, Julia Ingram. Julia, how are you today?
I'm great, Daniel. What a super introduction.
Well, thank you. Now, how did you get started in this line of work?
Oh, well, I completed graduate school in 1968 and started off on a traditional path. I worked in a psychiatric wing of a hospital for a couple of years and then went into private practice and worked pretty traditionally until I had a spiritual experience of my own. I was going to one of these workshops to, improve yourself, like I can't remember all the forum. This one was called The Pursuit of Excellence, and they did what they called closed eye exercises. Go within, and you'll meet a master, and that master will give you a gift. And people were having all these, exciting visions, and I wasn't seeing anything. I did not know how to look inside. It's like, where is it? How do you look? Mm-hmm. So a friend of mine said, well, you use hypnosis. Why don't you go see a hypnotist and see what you can find out there? And so I called somebody who was recommended, and the secretary said, well, do you want to lose weight? Do you want to improve your golf game? Do you want to stop smoking or have a past life regression? So I said, okay, I'll have that one. I'd never had a past life regression. I didn't even think about having one, but I was actually quite curious about the notion of reincarnation. So what the heck? Daniel, it was just astonishing. I easily went into trance, and pictures started showing up in my mind's eye. So that's where you look. You look in your mind's eye, and it just happened spontaneously under hypnosis. And the experience was mind-boggling to me, a past life that had connections to my present. It made several relationships make sense to me. I was just knocked my socks off. So I came out of trance, kind of in two realities at once for a couple of days, and then I called this guy back up and said, I want to learn how to do that. So that's what happened. I started integrating past life regression into my practice. I also got a lot of training, and I've just found it to be an excellent tool for helping people.
Now, it's interesting to use this approach. Is it really anxiety or the fear that we carry over from a past lifetime or in birth? Where does it start?
Well, what I've discovered is that it's all of those. And what you have to do is just ask the simple question with somebody in a trance state, go to the source of this problem. And then what shows up is a pure memory from the subconscious. So it's actually quite easy for people to access it. Mm-hmm.
Now, once they do, does this really kind of change things for people?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it looks almost miraculous, especially in terms of phobias, which are annoyingly called irrational fears. And I keep yelling, no, they're not irrational. The source is just long buried. So, say, for instance, you have, I'll give you an example from the book. A college student came to me with a huge fear of the dark and of closed spaces. Now, if she'd gone to a cognitive therapist, they would have had her do exposure therapy on both of those things, which is effective, but it takes a long time and it can be pretty stressful. So put her in a medium trance state, and she immediately started to hyperventilate. And so I moved her a little bit away from the experience and had her just look at what was going on. And she said, I'm a little girl, and I have been buried in a coffin, and then I woke up. So she was buried, presumed dead, but she wasn't. And as soon as the rocks started to hit her little coffin, she woke up. That's a terrifying death. She was buried alive. I mean, that's sort of a universal fear
right.
of long standing. But as we worked with it, and she helped the little girl, her present life self reaches in and helps the little girl out of that horrible place and gives her a little bit of affection and tells her it's okay and has her mother come and help her cross over, that phobia just disappeared. It was not hers, the present life person. It was a memory, but it was not her memory per se. It didn't happen in that body. So in one session, maybe 90 minutes, that phobia was gone. She called me. I mean, I don't just take somebody's word for it as they're leaving the office because they're still a little altered. But checking back with her a week later, she said, it's gone. Checking back with her 2 weeks later, it's still gone. I assume it was gone forever.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people, you were saying earlier, people will tend to look at this, well, these are irrational fears, but you know better. I mean, a lot of times people, as a result, will act or won't act as a result of something like this, just based on, their thinking, and it keeps them, from achieving and doing the things they want to achieve and do, but you're seeing people shift as this gets removed.
Exactly. Yeah. Now you're making me think of another case. This was of a young man who would be diagnosed with social anxiety, probably, and given an antidepressant, probably, if he'd gone mainstream. He said in the first interview, I feel like I shouldn't have been born. I should not have been born. And he acted like that. He had a really crappy job. He had roommates that were more or less freeloaders, and he was approaching 30 and fed up with that. So he said, I want to know why I feel this way. In this case, the regression took him back to his mother's womb. And as we poked around there, he really discovered that his conception was by rape, that his 16-year-old mother was raped. So that's a rough beginning right there. Mm-hmm. And what he heard in that mother's womb for 9 months was abuse from the family, shame, and this very, very strong message that he created his mother's suffering. When he was born, no one made him feel different. Grandfather treated him badly. Mother was benign, but she was 17. So he carried this with him into his adult life. He had no knowledge of his pre-birth trauma until the hypnosis. That wasn't a miracle cure. It took him quite a few weeks to finally come to loving himself. Mm-hmm. But some lovely things happened. He decided he wanted to verify all that he was coming up with, because people question hypnosis. They think they're making it up, or they worry that they're making it up. So instead of going to his mother, who he said was fragile, he went to his grandfather. And his grandfather said it was the big family secret, but that he did know his granddaughter had been date raped. They didn't use that term. It was unknown in that day, but he did know that. And grandfather broke into tears and asked for the grandson's forgiveness for being so cruel to his mother and then not helping to make sorry, your name is Daniel, make the boy feel better about himself. So it took a few weeks of inner child work, but he did recover. And I knew that had happened when he told me he was going back to school to get an advanced degree, and he kicked those two guys out of his apartment. Pre-birth trauma, horrible trauma.
Well, it's fascinating that you were able to discover and then turn things around.
Yeah.
So how does the process work usually?
Well, people usually call me for this reason. There's something in their life that's holding them back, and it's not always anxiety, but this book, Born Scared, is about those clients who have anxieties or fears. So I spend about 20 minutes of the first session just interviewing them, getting a feeling for their history, and then I explain how hypnosis works. And then that's what I do. I put them into a trance, get them in a very relaxed state, turn the analyzer and the judge off, those two left brain gremlins that make you question everything. We turn those off. And then the client just really is prompted to go to the source of the problem. Now, I make it sound like people can easily go to the source of the problem. Sometimes they can. Sometimes it takes getting used to the process, a session or two. But eventually we get there. And it's usually in 1 or 2 sessions. And I never know where we're going. I'm just running along beside them.
Well, it's very exciting to realize that you're able to do this and actually achieve results.
Well, it's certainly efficient too.
Changes, do they tend to be lasting?
Yes. You can't go once you have uncovered the problem and worked with it. It's never the same. Let me explain that. Say the phobia is public speaking. Here's a story. It's not in the book, but this is a recent one. A man said, "I've got to give a report in front of my colleagues, and there's 40 people, and I get nauseous just thinking about it. I'm so frightened." So in regression, he went back to 2nd grade. And is remembering being in the classroom and having to stand in front of the class. I think it was a recitation of some kind. And this little 7-year-old boy made a mistake, and the kids in the class laughed at him, and the teacher sort of scowled. He was absolutely humiliated and started to cry, which added to his humiliation. That memory got very buried. He repressed that memory. But now he has to, as an adult, give a little speech in front of some people, and he's terrified. So accessing that memory was extremely helpful to him. That was pure. That was the first time he'd gone to that memory. Now we worked with it. We helped him visualize going into the classroom, helping the little boy, letting them know that kids laugh because they get nervous and they're glad it's not them, but it was just a tiny little mistake. Just that, right. Like a kind teacher or a kind parent. And then he brings this little boy into present time. So it's now 2014. And he shows the little boy how much success he's had and his good friends and that life is good. Well, that's changed the little boy inside of him. The little boy inside of him is no longer traumatized. So that changes. That becomes the new reality because he's pictured it, he's felt it, he's said it. So that's the new story. So it is durable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, really deep, dark trenches in the brain are harder to change. That one was easy, and a lot of them are easy.
Mm-hmm.
Some patterns are require a lot of repetition before they're changed, especially people who have panic attacks. that one takes a lot more than a session or two. But eventually we get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this exciting new realization that we have that the brain can change, that it's not set, that it can always change. I worked with people in their 80s and 90s who were wanting to change something, and their brains can change too.
There you go. Always encouraging work to know that you're able to do this to help effectuate change in people. And, again, as you were alluding to earlier, well, there's no, these are irrational fears. It's easy for the person who doesn't experience the fear to say that, but then they have something they're generally afraid of as well. And you realize, these are things that actually cause people to not take action or to take the inappropriate action sometimes in a given situation.
Yeah, well said.
Mm-hmm. Now, how can people find out more about this work?
Well, you mean about hypnotherapy in general?
Yes, your work.
My work.
Yes.
My website. It's just my name, JuliaIngram.com. The book is already out in Kindle form, and it will be available April 1st as a print copy. Locally available in Portland, Oregon, the New Renaissance Bookshop, or Amazon.
Now, this was the first time that you self-published, because you've been successful with publishers before. Why did you decide to go that route?
Well, the first books were published in 1997 and 2004, when the New Age was flourishing. There were, like aisles in bookstores called New Age, and especially the first book, The Messengers, that hit the New York Times bestseller list and stayed there for 7 weeks. Simon & Schuster published it, but by 2004, New Age shelf is gone. And in its place, it's Body, Mind, and Spirit, or self-help. So
I'm going to go back to what we called it before now. The New Age stuff is gone.
Yeah, it is. It's gone. It's barely, you barely hear the word anymore. We're still around, but we're wearing new clothes, I guess. So my agent at the time said, even if an acquisitions editor loves your book, the real test is when it gets to marketing. And they say, where is this going to go on the shelf? How are people going to look for it? So it has to be like those 20 categories of books. It has to fit into one of those places. And mine doesn't really fit any place. There's no section called spiritual psychology. Mind, body, spirit is a lot more about the body. It's a lovely section. It's got like yoga and meditation. But they don't exactly fit there either. So self-help was the logical place, but I said to my agent, I cannot write this as a self-help book because anxiety disorders are serious and they need the help of a professional. And so I'm just not going to write a book that says you have panic attacks, you have phobias, agoraphobia, you have an eating disorder, read this book and this will help. It won't. It's not a self-help book. So I just said, this is not the book I want to write. The book I want to write is to give people inspiration and stories and examples and questions they can take to their therapist. So I wanted to publish the book in the form that worked for me. So, and a lot of people are self-publishing these days. It's no longer self-publish equals you couldn't get a publisher, or there's no embarrassment about it anymore. And reviewers review self-published books. It's what I preferred.
It's fascinating when you think about the realm of the publishing world and what's considered to be best-selling, and it's based on a book that sells well. And what's fascinating about that is a lot of times, or a fair amount of times anyway, those bestsellers just aren't that good. And then you find these ones that fly under the radar, and you're thinking, in this subject matter, this should be up there at the bestseller, because of how you tend to see bestsellers being very repetitious about what they say, especially in the realm of self-help. It's the same person with a new label saying the same thing these other 5 people said here, but yet here's this guy way down here nobody's ever heard of, and he's saying it better than all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And that you see things like that out there that really could truly help people instead of the same cliches and bites, and it's just really fascinating how that all works.
It is fascinating, but it's not as discouraging these days as it could have been, just because word of mouth is so fast.
Mm-hmm.
So a good book is going to have legs pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping my book will as well.
Well, I can see how what you have to say has relevance, when you think about, anxiety and pre-birth and birth trauma or a past life. And, an example of that is a friend of mine, who had a very good relationship with his mom, but somehow as this person got older, began to start feeling like there just wasn't the love there, and started looking back on, well, what was life really like? Well, this was a woman who became pregnant by a guy that really didn't want anything to do with the child at all. It was more of a, I just wanted the sex. I didn't expect that to happen, and just kind of went on his way. And you got to imagine during that 9 months that emotional, loop must have been carrying, into the womb and had an effect on that child over the years of feeling like, as he would explain, like always on the outside looking in, not really feeling like part of the family, so to speak. And it was just really interesting to hear that, because it was something that I never had really thought about before, versus a child who was born into a family where it's planned, it's loved and nurtured, it's all there. The woman's happy and ecstatic and glowing and in love. And you think about that situation, and, you've got quite a different child on your hands.
You certainly do. You certainly do. That fetus knows what's going on. It knows what its mother is feeling. I mean, mother's feelings are his feelings. And they can hear. They can hear words. There are experiments that show that a fetus can actually understand the language that's going on around him or her.
Mm-hmm.
And that if they are unwanted, they know it.
Now, Julia, where is your practice located? And if people are interested who are listening today, can they contact you? Does it need to be person to person, or can you do it by Skype? How does all this work?
It needs to be person to person. I have to have eyes on the person I'm working with, and I have to feel them as well, because I do entrain with my client as I'm working. My office is in Portland, Oregon, in the pretty Hollywood district, and I'm easy to find on the Internet.
Okay. Great website full of good information that people can find out a lot more about this as well.
Yes. I've got a few articles that people can read, and there's a little video interview.
Well,
but no Skyping, okay. no phone.
Okay.
Wouldn't be ethical.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. I'm starting to feel more confident already.
Hey, all right. Good job, Daniel.
Julie, again, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you for the great interview.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for finding out more about this. You can simply visit our website as well, which is beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We'll have a hot link for you there as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thanks again for joining us. And remember, live your day past halfway.